the point you said you were aiming for, you let it start to disappear at the end. If you would have held it where it was, you would have been slightly lower in altitude and you would have nailed your spot.
I'm Jason Miller, a full-time professional flight instructor. On the Finer Points channel, you can join me as I bring you tips and tricks that I've learned from 20 years on the flight line. Hello aviators, welcome back to the Finer Points. In this video, I want to talk to you about landings. This is good for experienced pilots or brand new pilots. It's a good reminder, or if you've never heard this before, it's super important when it comes to having good landings, particularly good landing approaches. And a stabilized approach is the beginning to all good landings. So let's take a look at this video here. What we're seeing is a landing approach, and you can see that there's an aiming point, or there should be an aiming point. The aiming point is that point in the window that is not moving. You know, it's important for a stabilized approach, that is stabilized in airspeed and rate of descent. If your airspeed is on target and you've got an aiming point, then when you round out, assuming you round out at the proper height, you will float some pretty known distance. And that's the art of landing, figuring out how far you're going to float for any given approach speed as you protect the nose wheel. But here we're watching a landing. This is from a recent flight lesson, and it's kind of subtle, but I want to point this out. You can see here that Jeremy is initially he's using the middle of the piano keys as an aiming point. And that's what we had discussed. But at some point, right here on the first approach, I don't know if you can see that, but the aiming point comes up just a little bit to the numbers, which is where we discussed him touching down. And incidentally, we're practicing short field landings here, so he's approaching at just about 60 knots, and he has to hit that spot, and we talked about touching down on the numbers. So you can see him come in here, and on this first pass right there, he raises the nose just a little bit and starts using the numbers themselves as the aiming point. It's a subtle distinction, but watch him float right past his spot on this first landing. All right, so we talk about it. I tell him he's rounding out a little bit early. What I'm trying to describe is that he's raising the nose just a little bit. I don't think I realized until I saw this video what he was actually doing, which is, changing his aiming point. But on this second pass, I advise him to hold the aiming point. That is about the middle of the piano keys. Just hold that until it's time to round out, okay? And it's time to round out when some spot about 100 feet in front of that aiming point disappears. Then you can round out, transition, protect the nose wheel, and nail your spot.
Up 90 Hotel Roger, there is one on the upwind and then one short final. Friction. Touching down. Do not overfly the Vision Jet on taxiway to beam ready and clear to land.
Big back brake.
Don't overfly the Vision Jet.
Brake. Show me your brake, and you got to stop like there's a wall in front.
I got it. Big brake.
Yeah, like bring the plane to a stop.
Okay.
Cool. All right. That was great. That was the one. That was on the money.
Need something to practice this weekend? Go out and work on aiming points during your landing approaches, stabilized airspeed. If your airspeed is on target and you hold that aiming point until some spot about 100 feet in front of it disappears under your dash, and then you round out and protect the nose wheel. Winds aside, you'll probably hit your spot every time. Huge thanks to you guys. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment, check out our Ground School app. Also, a huge thanks to the sponsors for their support of this show. Please remember that when you renew your AOPA membership, you should select Pilot Protection Services. A huge thanks to the patrons. Without that support, I just couldn't make these videos. So please come to patreon.com/learntfp to get all of the bonus content and support the Finer Points. A huge thanks to you guys for watching. You're the best fans on the internet. Until next time, be safe and fly your best.